Canyon Lake is vanishing. Right now. Today. Not slowly disappearing over decades. Gone. 34 million gallons of water lost every single day. That is not a prediction. That is not a worst-case scenario. That is the measured, documented reality as of this morning. The lake sits 20 feet below where it should be. Every public boat ramp for motorized boats is closed. A water utility just told 9 housing developers in one of the fastest-growing counties in America that it cannot guarantee water when people turn on their taps. And here is the part nobody is talking about. Canyon Lake is not even the worst one. 40 miles to the west sits a lake that scientists say has essentially stopped existing. A lake that was fully functional just 7 years ago, now at 4% full, barely a puddle. 2 lakes, millions of people depending on them, both of them disappearing. So what happens to a region when the water it was built on simply runs out? Here is the number you need to hold in your head. 34 million gallons. Every single day. Not during a record heat wave. Not in an unusually dry week. Every day, since January 1st, 2026, Canyon Lake has been losing 34 million gallons of water. That is 106 acre-feet evaporated, drained, and gone before the sun sets tonight. And it will happen again tomorrow. And every day after that for the foreseeable future. That is not a projection. That is not a worst-case scenario pulled from a climate model. That is the measured average daily loss rate, documented and confirmed by water managers watching this lake disappear in real time. Canyon Lake is currently sitting 20.4 feet below where it should be. To put that in terms, you can picture, if the lake were full right now, the trucks parked on the surrounding hillsides would be completely underwater. That is how much water is missing. That is the scale of what has already been lost, and the rain that should be replacing it is not coming. Since January 1st, 2026, San Antonio has received just 1.46 inches of rain. That is 40% of what is normal for this point in the year. The city is already running a 60% rainfall deficit in the first 2 months of 2026 alone. Some nearby monitoring stations have recorded even less. Stinson Municipal Airport on San Antonio's south side recorded 0.53 inches. Seguin recorded 0.7 inches. Pleasanton recorded 0.6 inches. These are not rounding errors. These are measurements from a region that has fundamentally stopped receiving the rainfall it depends on to survive. San Antonio's total rainfall deficit since 2022 has now grown to nearly 45 inches. That is not a bad year or two. That is 4 straight years of compounding water debt, building year after year, with no meaningful recovery in sight. The rainfall that used to feed Canyon Lake and keep the hill country's rivers and aquifers charged simply has not been arriving. And here is the part that should stop you cold. It is going to get worse. As Texas moves into spring and then summer, as temperatures climb and evaporation accelerates, water managers are already warning that the daily loss rate from Canyon Lake will increase. The lake that is losing 34 million gallons today will lose more tomorrow. The 60% capacity level it sits at now will keep sliding south. If the summer of 2026 looks anything like the summer of 2025, Canyon Lake could be approaching its all-time historic lows again before fall even arrives. The numbers are not leveling off. They are not stabilizing. They are moving in one direction. And that direction is down. Canyon Lake did not always look like this. There was a version of this place that people took entirely for granted. A version where the water was full, the boat ramps were open, and the idea that this lake could run out was not something anyone spent serious time thinking about. Canyon Lake was created in the 1960s, built about 40 miles north of San Antonio, in the limestone and cedar of the Texas Hill Country. It did not fill overnight. It took decades of rainfall, of accumulated runoff, of patient natural recharge to reach the levels it was designed to hold. The people who built it understood what it was for: drinking water for surrounding communities, flood control for a region prone to violent flash floods, recreation for the families and businesses that grew up around its shoreline. 3 functions, all of them essential, all of them now under threat. For most of its existence, Canyon Lake held up its end of the deal. It never sat below 50% full. Not during bad droughts, not during brutal heat waves, not during any dry spell in the lake's recorded history. That baseline held for decades, until 2025, when it stopped holding. On May 26, 2025, Canyon Lake hit 45.1% capacity, the lowest level ever recorded since the dam was built. Lower than any drought the lake had survived before. Lower than any heat wave, any dry spell, any previous moment in the lake's entire existence. It was a record nobody wanted. Then the July 4th floods arrived. Catastrophic, deadly floods that tore through the hill country and killed people and devastated communities. But they also poured water back into a desperately thirsty lake. Canyon Lake recovered to nearly 70%. For a moment, people exhaled. The crisis felt survivable. That moment lasted 4 months. By early 2026, the skies went dry again. The rain stopped. The sun stayed. And Canyon Lake began losing every gallon of that hard-won recovery, sliding back down through the 60s, falling toward the historic lows it had barely escaped just months before. What makes this more than a story about a struggling recreation spot is what Canyon Lake actually represents to the people who depend on it. It is the largest single water source for San Marcos, a city of 70,000 people that relies on this lake for up to 8.9 million gallons of water per day. When Canyon Lake drops, San Marcos feels it. Right now, San Marcos is in Stage 3 water restrictions. Outdoor irrigation is limited to once every 2 weeks. The city watches the lake levels every morning, knowing that what happens to that water determines what comes out of their taps. 40 miles west of Canyon Lake, there is a body of water that stopped pretending months ago. Medina Lake. Currently sitting at 4.2% full, 86 feet below capacity. A lake that in living memory was a functioning reservoir, a recreation destination, a water source that communities built their lives around. Now it is barely there. Before getting into what happened to Medina Lake, it is worth understanding what dead pool status actually means. The term gets used casually sometimes, thrown around like dramatic shorthand. It is not dramatic shorthand. It is a precise technical designation for a genuinely catastrophic condition. When a reservoir hits dead pool status, the water level has dropped below the lowest outlet point in the dam. Water can no longer flow downstream on its own. The lake stops functioning as a water supply source. It stops functioning as a flood control tool. It essentially stops being a lake in any meaningful sense and becomes a large, shallow, landlocked puddle with no connection to the communities that depend on it. Medina Lake hit dead pool status in April 2025. Then it hit it again in May 2025, falling to 1.9% capacity, the lowest level ever recorded in the lake's history. For more than 3 years, Medina Lake has been below 10% full, not below 50%, not below 25%, below 10% for 3 consecutive years, with no meaningful recovery. The consequences for real people were immediate and lasting. Farmers who had depended on Medina Lake for irrigation had to abandon it entirely and shift to groundwater pumping. Businesses built around the lake's appeal faced questions with no good answers. Boat rental operators, fishing guides, waterfront restaurants, all of them staring at the same horizon and asking whether there was a future in a place where the lake might not meaningfully exist. Dave Mock, general manager of the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District, described what dead pool status meant for the communities around Medina Lake in exactly one sentence. "It's just been so dry for so long. No technical language, no policy framing, no carefully worded statement designed to manage public perception. Just the lived reality of a region that has watched its primary water source disappear over years of relentless, unbroken drought." Medina's situation is more extreme than Canyon Lake's, but Canyon Lake is following the same trajectory, falling in the same direction, losing water by the same daily arithmetic. Water managers watching Canyon Lake are watching it with the same alarm they brought to Medina before Medina passed the point of no return. 2 lakes, 1 direction. And the distance between where Canyon Lake is now and where Medina Lake already is may be shorter than anyone wants to admit. To understand why this water crisis hit so hard, you have to understand what the Texas Hill Country decided to become over the last 2 decades. Because the drought alone does not explain the full picture. The drought combined with what humans chose to build on top of it. That is the complete story. The Hill Country used to be a place people passed through. Comal County, Bandera County, Kendall County. That stretch of cedar and limestone rolling between San Antonio and Austin. Scenic, quiet, small towns, wineries, river tubing, a weekend destination for city families looking to exhale. People visited. They did not necessarily stay. Then it became a place people moved to. The explosive growth of San Antonio and Austin pushed people outward. Land was cheaper in the Hill Country. The views were better. The pace was slower. For families priced out of the urban cores, a house on a Hill Country lot looked like the Texas dream made real. Developers followed the people. Subdivisions followed the developers. New Braunfels became one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country for several years running. Comal County consistently appeared on national growth lists year after year, a region absorbing population at a pace its infrastructure was never designed to handle. And underneath all of that growth, the water supply was not growing with it. Texas Water Company, the utility serving approximately 78,000 people across Comal, Blanco, Kendall, Bandera, and surrounding counties, watched this happen for years. Then, in early 2025, they made a decision that communicated more than any press release ever could. They turned down 9 new housing developments in Comal County. Not because the land was unavailable, not because the permits were not in order, because there was not enough water to support them. Given current conditions, the utility said, we must temporarily pause new service commitments to uphold our responsibility to provide customers water when they turn on their faucets. Read that carefully. A water utility in Central Texas told 9 developers in one of the fastest growing counties, in one of the fastest growing states in the country, that it could not guarantee water service. Not in some distant hypothetical future. Now, under conditions that exist today. That is what happens when a region builds faster than its water supply during a drought that has been classified as extreme for 71 consecutive weeks in San Antonio alone. 71 weeks. Almost a year and a half of unbroken, back-to-back classified extreme drought. And San Antonio is not sitting on the outer edge of this drought system. It is at its center. The Hill Country did not just run into a drought. It ran into a drought while running out of room to absorb one. The word dead pool sounds like something from a disaster movie. It is not. It is a lived condition with real consequences that spread far beyond the lake itself, rippling outward into farms and businesses and kitchen taps and aquifers that were already being pushed beyond their limits before the drought even began. For the farmers around Medina Lake, dead pool status was not an abstract designation. It was the moment their irrigation source stopped existing. Fields that had been watered from the lake for generations could no longer depend on it. The pivot to groundwater pumping was not a choice made from a menu of good options. It was the only option left. But groundwater is not a bottomless backup. Aquifers recharge slowly, over years and decades, and they are being drained from every direction simultaneously. Robert Mace, one of Texas's foremost water scientists, has described the situation plainly. The hill country is losing water from above, through absent rainfall, and losing water from below, through accelerating aquifer depletion, driven by population growth and development. Both systems are under pressure at the same time. No redundancy, no buffer. Just two drains running at once with no faucet open to replace what is leaving. For San Marcos, the consequences of Canyon Lake's decline arrive in the form of restrictions that reshape daily life in ways that compound quietly. Stage 3. Water restrictions mean outdoor irrigation once every 2 weeks. It means residents watching how they use water in ways they never had to think about before. It means city officials watching the lake numbers every single morning and making decisions based on a trajectory that is still pointed downward. And then there are the images that make the scale of this impossible to dismiss. In the spring of 2025, photos began circulating on a local kayaking group online. They showed people paddling kayaks through areas of Canyon Lake that, just 1 year earlier, had been open water. Not shallow water, open water. By spring 2025, those same areas had been reduced to knee-deep channels cutting through what used to be the lake floor. Exposed sediment, cracked soil, the ghost of a lakebed that was never supposed to see sunlight. The images spread locally because they communicated something that no statistic fully captures. The before and the after, placed side by side with no commentary needed. Water, then dirt. A visual record of what 34 million gallons lost every single day actually looks like when it accumulates over months. When the numbers stop being numbers and become landscape. When the drought stops being a crisis on a chart and becomes the ground beneath your feet where a lake used to be. When a lake starts disappearing, the businesses built around it face a choice that has no good answer. Wait for the water to come back and risk losing everything in the meantime. Or adapt to a reality that should not exist and find a way to keep moving. The businesses that have survived around Canyon Lake have mostly chosen the second option. Not because it is easy, because it is the only one available. Cranes Mill Marina did not have the luxury of waiting. When Canyon Lake started dropping seriously, the marina could not simply close its doors and hope for rain. So it moved. The entire marina relocated 1,000 feet out into the lake, chasing the waterline as it retreated across what used to be the lake floor. Pack up the docks, move the slips, haul the equipment, follow the water. That is what staying open looks like when the lake your entire business depends on is pulling away from you in real time. Not a temporary inconvenience, a fundamental restructuring of where the water actually is and where you need to be to reach it. Dustin Smith owns Below the Belt Services, a boat detailing business on Canyon Lake. He has been watching the water levels fall and quietly running the math on what it means for his livelihood. Right now, there are no public boat ramps open at Canyon Lake for motorized boats. None. When boat ramps close, fewer people put their boats in the water. Fewer boats in the water means fewer boats that need detailing work. I have been fortunate enough to have enough boats to fill my time, he said. But those boats will run out. That single sentence captures the economic psychology of a drought-hit community more precisely than any damage report. Things are manageable right now. The work is still there. But there is a horizon that everyone can see coming, and nobody has a plan for what happens when it arrives. Mason Perez, a dockhand at Cranes Mill, put the water situation simply. "The lake levels are scary," he said, "very scary." Then he added something that reveals how distorted things have become. Despite the terrifying water levels, the lake was actually drawing visitors. The low water had exposed more shoreline, created more open space, and people were still coming out. Still putting kayaks in where they could. Still swimming at the spots that had water. But Canyon Lake is not a beach. It is a reservoir. It is a municipal water supply for a city of 70,000 people. Record visitor access at historically low water levels is not a silver lining. It is a measurement of how far the situation has already fallen, dressed up to look like good news. Governor Abbott has had drought disaster declarations covering more than 90 Texas counties in continuous effect since July 2022. He renews them every few weeks. The declarations are real. The acknowledgement is real. The paperwork that says Texas recognizes this crisis as a crisis is completely genuine, and none of it has stopped Canyon Lake from losing 34 million gallons per day. The legislature passed water infrastructure investment bills in 2025 worth billions of dollars. The Texas Water Development Board has programs designed to address exactly this kind of long-term water stress. Planning documents exist, committees have met, studies have been commissioned. The machinery of government response has been running, producing the outputs that government response produces: reports, allocations, frameworks, timelines. But here is what none of those documents can do. They cannot make it rain. Catherine Romans, executive director of the Hill Country Alliance, has framed the water crisis in terms that go beyond any single drought cycle or any single legislative session. The region is growing like crazy, she has said, and the plan her organization spent 18 months developing, drawing input from 2,800 Hill Country residents, prioritizes water above everything else. Not roads, not schools, not tax rates. Water. Because without water, nothing else the Hill Country is trying to build or sustain is possible. Every other priority depends on the one resource that is currently disappearing. Robert Mace, one of Texas's foremost water scientists, has stated plainly that the combination of drought and rapid population growth is creating a water stress scenario the state has never faced at this scale. The math is not complicated. The water available does not equal the water committed. Growth added demand. Drought removed supply. The gap between those two numbers is where the crisis lives. Texas Water Company's decision to block 9 new housing developments in Comal County was not a political statement. It was not a philosophical position on growth or development or the future of the Hill Country. It was arithmetic. The answer to new demand under current conditions is no. That is an extraordinary moment for a state that has spent decades saying yes to everyone who showed up with permits and plans and capital ready to build. The seasonal forecast offers nothing to hold on to. Water managers are not projecting meaningful relief before summer. The 34 million gallons per day being lost from Canyon Lake right now will become more as temperatures climb through April, May, and June. The trajectory does not bend upward. It does not level off. It continues in the direction it has been moving since 2022, the year the rain stopped keeping pace with the demands being placed on a water system that was already being stretched to its limits. No declaration reverses 4 years of rainfall deficit. No bill replaces what the sky has stopped delivering. Stand at the edge of Canyon Lake right now and look at what the water left behind. Cracked soil where the shoreline used to be. Boat ramps that end in dry ground. A waterline stain pressed into the rocks, sitting 20 feet above where the surface is today. That stain is not ancient history. That is where the water was not long ago. And it is a record of everything that has been lost since. The lake is still there. It is still 60% full. There is still water in it. But it is losing 34 million gallons every single day. And it is heading into the most punishing evaporation season of the year with no meaningful rainfall on the forecast. The numbers do not stabilize from here. They get worse. 40 miles west, Medina Lake was fully functional 7 years ago. Today, it is 4.2% full, essentially gone. Not a future warning, a present reality. The governor signs the declarations. The legislature funds the projects. The marina moves 1,000 feet out into the lake to chase a water line that keeps retreating. The utility turns away housing developers because the water to serve them does not exist. And Canyon Lake keeps losing 34 million gallons a day. The hill country built its future on the assumption that the water would stay. The water is leaving. And the question that no declaration, no bill, and no planning document has fully answered yet is the only one that matters now. What comes next when it is gone?